and welcome to installment 4 of Achieve Wellbeing. I'm Dr. Lisa Kirk Brown, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, Doctor of Public Health with almost 30 years experience in preventive medicine, and disabled American veteran. Last installment of Achieve Wellbeing, I introduced to you the pillars of well-being as well as the 12-step personal roadmap to help you to achieve a state of comfort, health, and happiness. Today, I want to discuss with you activity and rest, one of the most important elements of the physical aspect of well-being. During the last installment, I described to you how physical well-being is simply taking care of the body that you have, putting into it what it needs, and maintaining it to the best of your ability. Similar to a car, I gave the analogy of a car, how you need to put in gas and oil and maintain it to keep it working properly, functioning properly. Physical well-being is simply that, doing what you need to do to keep your body functioning properly. Lots of you may have chronic stress, chronic fatigue, and chronic pain. I know I do. I have multiple sclerosis and lupus, both which can cause chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and stress from all the things that I have to do to manage it. However, I believe activity and rest are one of the most important tools you have to combat chronic fatigue, chronic stress, and chronic pain. They've worked for me, and I hope that through this installment I can motivate and encourage you to have them work for you as well. Philosophically, during the last installment, I talked about Plato and Aristotle. Well, they had something to say about activity and rest as well. Their point of view was that you can't escape the body that you have, and that activity and rest were one of the things that would help you adjust to whatever impacts you had on your physical well-being and your body. They thought that it improved the way you looked, that it improved your mood, that it improved your brain, that it improved your sleep, that it improved your way of dealing with stress. A lot of the medical research today has actually brought that to bear. I'm going to talk a little bit about the medical research around fatigue and a little bit about the medical research around exercise, as well as my tips for both of those. However, a lot more of the medical research will be in my book, Achieve Wellbeing, at the end of the year. A little bit about my personal story with activity and rest. When I was a kid, I grew up in the projects of East Cleveland with my mom, who was very ill, and she was on welfare. To say the least, I took care of her and had quite a bit of stress from that experience. What I found at a very early age was that activity significantly helped me reduce the stress that I was dealing with at home and helped me to manage my life a lot better. It helped me to become more successful. My brain worked better. I was able to get good grades, and so on and so forth. Lots of people have given this exact example in their own personal stories, and maybe you know experimentally from your life the same exact thing. What the medical research indicates about physical activity is that it does just that. It reduces fatigue, it gives us more energy, it helps our digestion, it improves our happiness, it improves our mood, our cognition, and a host of other things. There's a significant book called Spark from John Rattley that's recently been put out on the market, I guess within the last decade or so, that discusses a lot of these aspects, but especially the fact that cognition is improved through exercise. So school children, for example, do significantly better in school when they are doing some type of physical activity regularly. I would highly recommend that book as it goes into how energy is produced, how stress is reduced, how mood is improved, how sleep quality improves, how pain is relieved, how digestion is improved, how cognition is improved, and how overall health, happiness, and comfort are improved with physical activity. From a few studies that are more recent, there's a lot of information on both activity and rest on the NIH website. The NIH Heart, Blood, and Lung Institute have a sleep guide, Guide to Healthy Sleeping, which is really helpful. And there's a lot of other information on the benefits of aerobic activity, muscular training, and stretching to overall health and wellness, as well as the things that I described, the reduced stress and the reduced fatigue, and so on and so forth. However, there's a couple of new studies that I found within the last 2 years, well, 2015 and 2016. One was out of the University of Mississippi that described that muscular training can improve sleep duration. So they sampled 4,386 adults aged 20 to 85 out of the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and discovered that after adjusting for aerobic activities, there was a 19% increased odds of meeting the 7 to 8 hours sleep requirement a night if you did just simply muscular training, which is any type of, weightlifting, push-ups, calisthenics, things like that. With that, that's a very simple thing you can do to improve your sleep quality. The benefits of aerobic activity as well as the benefits of muscular activity are significant to our sleep quality and our sleep duration. Another study out of the University of Wisconsin this year studied microstructural changes in gray matter and white matter in the human brain by MRI imaging. They did structural and diffusion weighted MRI and high density EEG in 16 subjects, so a much smaller study. But when they looked at the changes in gray matter and white matter and the ability to concentrate, sleep significantly improved the ability of the brain to adjust to learning. And so, again, John Rattley's book is being proven through medical research. A lot of the studies that are out there provide new information for public health and for nutrition, for activity and rest. So I wanted to share just a moment with you on what the different levels of medical research are for public health. The first level of research in public health are called cross-sectional studies. They give us a snapshot in time of what's happening with disease and injury and illness. They're done at one point in time, and they give us what's called prevalence data or rates of different things happening in the varying population, different age groups, different genders, different ethnicities, etc. The next level of public health research are called case control studies. Those studies are done to look for risk factors causing certain disease entities, diseases, illnesses, or injuries. And those studies usually report in odds, like the study I just mentioned. The next level is called a cohort study. That would be a much larger study of general population, stratified for different age groups, different races, different genders, and followed over time. So either followed forward in time or back in time, retrospectively. Those studies are really expensive and involve a lot of different people and a lot of different moving parts and require big data sets and a lot of statistical analysis. And so they're done a little more infrequently. And then the final type of public health study is called a clinical trial. Clinical trials are usually done to determine if an intervention or a pharmaceutical work in a given setting. They're extremely expensive and require a lot of review for ethics and for harm that make sure that people aren't harmed in the study. And so those are done a lot more infrequently. So you can see from these different levels of research in public health, there could be a lot of changes in the recommendations that are made to our general population. And so there's always new information coming out. What I'm going to provide to you in the book and in this these installments of Achieve Wellbeing are from the medical research that's out there, and we would expect it to change. So please stay tuned and keep up abreast of the different things that are happening as best you can. Talk to your doctor about it and different people, and you can always email me if you have questions or want more information about a specific topic. My email is drbrown.disabledveteran@gmail.com. All right, so now I want to give you some of my recommendations for activity and rest. So for activity, I basically have 8 different recommendations for you. So the first is that you would have a routine, that you would get up each day and get dressed. For people who are severely disabled and challenged, dealing with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and chronic stress, I do think one of the most important things you can do, and it counts as activity, is to get up every day and get dressed, preferably at a reasonable hour so that you can make the most of your day. I know it sounds very small and very unimportant, but it really is important to get your well-being started off. If you get up at a reasonable hour and get dressed, it might be extremely challenging. It might be it might take a lot of energy to do that, but I do think that it will help you to enjoy the benefits of well-being the rest of the day. Number 2, move as much as possible. This is all about movement. Whether you're doing a marathon or sitting in your home just lifting weights, do what you can do. Obviously, number 3 is that it's variable. It varies by individual. So if you have time to do activity every day, I would encourage you to do that. It's very important to keep your body moving for all the things we discussed. The movement of our body is what will keep all of our cells regenerating and moving throughout our system and our physiology, and it will reduce inflammation, take out some of the toxins, and do a whole host of other medical things that will keep your body as functioning as well as possible. So number 1, have a routine of getting up and getting dressed. Number 2, move as much as you can in whatever way you can. And 3, don't worry about varying it. I myself attended a multiple sclerosis yoga class. In that class, my teacher gives us recommendations on standing, sitting, or in a wheelchair. And so every person, if they have any ability to move, should be able to do some type of physical activity. There's lots of resources on the internet. There's lots of resources that I can provide for you on these different methods of exercise. Whether you're a marathoner or a disabled person, there's options for everyone as long as we spend some time moving each day. The next thing is to set a goal. And so for me personally, I'll just share my goal. I have a goal to do yoga twice a week, to ride my bike for 20 minutes twice a week, to try to swim, and to try to walk a half a mile several times a week. So I used to be a marathoner, and so for me, I set a goal to run a certain amount at a certain amount of time. So your goal needs to be high but achievable. It needs to be tied to some type of time frame, and it also needs to have a very specific entity around it. So a marathoner may set a goal of running 22 miles a month before the marathon. Very specific, achievable for them, and has a timeline on it. For me, I have the timeline of doing it a certain amount of time each week. So I have a timeline on it that it's by week. Another person might have a different timeline, that they have a goal of doing a plank for 2 minutes. And so a very specific goal, something that can be achieved. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. You want to set yourself up for success. And you want to make sure that it has a specific time on it so that you actually can achieve that goal by a certain time. And then set new goals so that you have more to reach for and more to do. The next tip is to be consistent. And this is a little bit harder because a lot of people get into the habit of activity and then they quickly get out of it. And I know how that is. I've done that myself over time. But I do know from the literature and from my own experience, and you probably do as well, the more consistent you are, the better you feel over time and the better your body performs. You lose, at an older age, you lose the muscle tone and the aerobic ability at a much quicker rate. Studies show that. And so what I would encourage you to do is be as consistent as possible. Set goals that are realistic around that and try to be as consistent as possible. Number 6, pick a time of day that works for you. For me, it's the morning. I just have always been that way. I feel better in the morning, and with pain from multiple sclerosis and lupus, I find that if I work out in the morning, my joints are looser and the pain is minimized, and I just feel better throughout the whole day. And so I would encourage you to pick a time of day that works for you, whether it's morning, noon, or night, even if it's in the middle of the night. Find a time that you can be consistent and that you can be successful at. Number 7, remember that physical therapy and occupational therapy are forms of physical activity, and you can include those in your rubric of the amount of time you need to do for activity. And then finally, don't forget recovery time. So recovery time is imperative because as we age, we all require a little bit longer recovery time, and as we have different diseases, we may need more recovery time as well. Dara Torres was an Olympic swimmer. She swam in the Olympics at 18 and at 40 years old. What she said about her recovery time was that the biggest difference between swimming at 18 and swimming at 40 at the Olympic level was recovery time. She needed twice the recovery time at 40 that she needed at 18. I find for me with chronic disease, a good rule of thumb for someone with disability or chronic disease, really anybody, is that if it takes longer than 1 to 3 hours to recover from an activity, you're probably doing too much. So to put that in practical terms, say you run for a mile and you feel really tired and you're limping maybe after that mile for 1 to 3 hours. That's okay, but if you're still limping and feeling really tired for 2 or 3 days, you're probably doing too much. Back off a little bit and be gentle with yourself, and remember that your body's changing. Don't compare your 40-year-old self or your disabled self with the person, yourself, at 23 or 21 or even 30. They're totally different things, and your body's changing significantly over time. And so just remember to be gentle with yourself and set goals that are achievable and take recovery time into account for each of the activities that you do. Okay, again, remember the idea is movement. So get out there and do whatever you can, whether it's kayaking or paddleboarding or camping. Just try your very best to do some type of activity each and every day. It'll do you well. Now for rest, the National Heart, Blood, and Lung Institute recommends 7 to 8 hours a day. There was a new study that came out just last week from the CDC that said people could do okay with 6.5 hours. Like I said earlier, medical research is always being updated and always changing. For now, I'm going to go with the 7 to 8 hours, especially if you have some type of chronic disease or disability. Sleep is so important. I can't stress that enough. It will minimize your stress. It will really help you to manage your weight, to improve your digestion, and to give you more energy. So I'm recommending that 7 to 8 hours a day for everybody. Some of the things that can help you with that 7 to 8 hours a day, I know we all have very, very active lives and we're very busy. The most important thing you can do is look at your activities and look at your sleep. So a journal to log both activities and sleep is extremely helpful in managing your sleep. What that looks like is simply I can send you a copy of it by email if you'd like a copy of it, but it really is just getting up and for 3 days logging how you slept that night, and for every half hour after, writing down what your activity is and how fatigued and how much pain you have. So every half hour writing what you're doing, how fatigued, and how much pain you have. Do that for 3 days and see if there's any patterns or trends in what's disrupting your sleep and what's causing you to be fatigued. And then make some changes according to that log. I know it sounds like a big commitment, a time commitment, and it kind of is, but if you can just print it out and take it with you and make sure that you set a timer and log it consistently for every 30 minutes, it will be amazing what emerges and how you can better manage your sleep and your sleep quality. There's a lot of things that disrupt our sleep, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of them, and then I'm going to refer you to other experts on some of the other issues. A lot of the medical literature around sleep, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, is on sleep disorders and sleep problems. And so there's just new information coming out, like I shared with you about that 2015 study, on how sleep actually affects our physical well-being. The next thing I want you to do is understand light in your home and in your evening hours. The brain was originally created to respond to the sun. So our brain becomes alert when we see light from the sun and we wake up. Nowadays, we have lots of artificial light in our homes, and we have iPads, we have mobile devices, we have TV. We have a lot of inputs of light into our brains in the evening hours when we're supposed to be winding down and being prepared for sleep. Unfortunately, these lights mimic the sun, and so they turn our brain on and make us feel like we're awake and can disrupt our sleep. So there's some tools I want to give you to manage that. Part of them are just simple self-discipline things: turning off the TV, turning off your iPhone, your iPad, your mobile devices, and turning down the lights. Another option is to buy these orange light bulbs and orange reading glasses that can take out the blue light and actually trick our minds into feeling sleepy and to believing we're in the dark. I would recommend, if you have problems with sleep, to try those first. They're natural, they don't cost much money, and they could help you maintain better sleep duration and better quality sleep. The next thing is our herbal remedies. There's several on the market that I think are quite good. I don't want to recommend certain dosing or anything, because I think you need to talk to your doctor about anything you're taking supplement-wise. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next few installments. But there are two things, melatonin and valerian root, that are very good for making us calm and helping us to get into a better sleep state. Next, I would recommend that you prepare for sleep, that you wind down for sleep. So just like the routine of waking up and getting dressed, you want a routine to get ready for bed. If you had children, you know that they need about a good half hour to 45 minutes to really know that they're going to get into bed and to be ready to sleep. You can't just come home from a day at the circus and go straight to sleep. You have to kind of get them into that routine, and we need that as adults as well. So maybe washing your face a few hours before bed, not eating right before bed, not drinking alcohol right before bed. Some of those things that can help you prepare for that good quality sleep would do a lot of good for you to be able to sleep better and sleep longer. Then finally, my last recommendation is to practice mindfulness, which mindfulness is just a state of being in the present, being aware of the present. And so as you're preparing for sleep, really being mindful of that, being ready for sleep, doing some meditation or some deep breathing to prepare you for the sleep experience. I'm going to talk a lot more about mindfulness in one of the installments of Achieve Wellbeing. It's one of my areas, but I'm also going to pull it through all of the 12 elements, because there's implications to each of them that I want to highlight, and I think it's really important for all of the elements of well-being to talk about mindfulness and how it can be incorporated for that exact element of Achieve Wellbeing. And then finally, if you have sleep problems or sleep disorders, sleep apnea, or any other issues that are beyond what I've discussed, please see your medical provider and get some of those tests. There's some really good information out there for sleep apnea and sleep disorders, and by all means, really try to put that as a priority, because sleep is so important to your well-being. All right, I promised you some resources, and I've already mentioned the Spark book by John Ratley. If you have time, I would really recommend reading that. And then also the NIH website is really, really good with different recommendations on physical activity. There's so many resources these days about physical activity. I think a lot of them are aimed at fitness and looking better, but I do think that a lot of those are could be incorporated into just general well-being for people with disability or chronic illness. Most important, though, is to remember to keep moving and not to compare yourself to anybody else but yourself. And to remember to be gentle with yourself and kind to yourself, that your ability is what your ability is, and we all have some ability. Even if we're severely disabled, I believe we can still do some type of activity every day. Remember that I'm writing the Achieve Wellbeing book. I'll have more recommendations in there specifically for people with disability and illness. And then I want to recommend some apps that I think are really helpful. The MyFitnessPal app is one that I use that I think is excellent for my phone. It logs just about any activity that you do, and it gives you some goals, and you can do some challenges, and you can do some online kind of challenges with other people, and I think it's really helpful to at least know what you're doing and how consistent you are, to look back and assess yourself. The Livestrong app is excellent. There's fitness devices, Fitbit, Jawbone, iPhone. There's several others out there nowadays that you can wear. They track both physical activity and sleep. They assess your sleep. They also can do heart rate, other things, weight, body fat, all those other things. So I would recommend, if you can find one that works for you, that you can afford, to have one is really a great thing, since activity and rest are so important to your well-being. And then finally, I mentioned the NIH National Heart, Lung, Blood Guide to Healthy Sleeping, and I would recommend looking through that. There's other resources on sleep that I can recommend to you, and if you're interested, just email me and I'll be happy to send any of that to you. So, in conclusion, thank you so much for watching the Achieve Wellbeing Installment 4 on activity and rest. I really look forward to hearing your comments and to working with you on all the elements of well-being. Please remember that activity and rest, I think, are probably the most important parts of your personal roadmap to achieve well-being. So if you have a one on those, reach out to me, do some more research on your own, and encourage yourself that you can do it. You can be active. You can get good rest. I believe it, and so should you. So I look forward to next installment of Achieve Wellbeing number 5 on nutrition, and I'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you so much. Bye.